listening to the FatherhoodRules.com podcast network. It's the 80-20 Movie Show with Pat Himes and Gary Smith. The 80-20 Movie Show definitely contains adult language and themes. Our boys look at the world of movies, old and new, based on a score of 80% or higher from Rotten Tomatoes, with an occasional movie scored 20% thrown in to keep them honest. Contrary to popular belief, they don't always agree, but they're always interesting. Now here are Pat Himes and Gary Smith.
At
Twitter.
Yep.
And that was your fan shoutout
of the week.
All right, when we come back, I'll set this up. I'm going to tease it right now, Gary. I read an article on Monday, and I was like, this is fucking brilliant. And it's from Vanity Fair.
Yeah, well, there's a reason why this guy's a genius.
And then I'm like, Gary, I'm gonna try to get this guy. And Gary's like, fuck you, you're stupid. No one will come on this show that writes for such a fine publication.
I said, do whatever you need to do, Pat.
And I did.
Yes, you did.
So when we come back, we'll talk about it. It's going to be Vanity Fair's Nick Bilton. It's the 80-20 Movie Show presented by Fatherhood Rules.
Pat, why don't you have a seat right here? There's something we need to talk about.
Hey, no problem, but I'm not sitting in your lap.
Chaostroffic.com is a great sponsor of ours, but I'm starting to get really concerned about you being addicted to their content.
I'm not really sure what you mean there, guy. Also, can you be quick? I got to get back to my computer.
That's exactly what I mean. I know that you're about to sit down and look at the Chaostroffic.com Nifty 50.
So, grannies need love too, Gary.
For the next 4 hours?
It's my alone time.
Also, you're not wearing any pants.
I do my laundry on Chaostroffic.com's TNA Tuesday.
Is that a Batman thong?
It's a Barry Allen original, my friend.
Also, where did you get that really tight-fitting, I like my bushes natural, not trimmed t-shirt?
From the Chaostroffic store.
Okay, my friend, it's time for you to explore some of the other parts of Chaostroffic.com for now.
You know, I think you're right. I'll start by visiting Chaostroffic.com's Nerdvana games, Cutesy Poo, and Lewd Food sections.
We can also order you a new t-shirt.
Oh, really? I have the perfect one in mind. Give me tidbits of trivia or give me death.
I'll get my credit card.
All this and more can be found at Chaostroffic.com and find out just what they mean when they say, we give you more boobs and less politics.
That's www.chaostroffic.com. Pat, do you shave your legs?
Out of my safe space!
I love you, Pat, but God, I worry about you.
You're not. I'm going to split screen us a couple times. You'll see us fucking drinking and going, yeah, we're fucking awesome. Yeah. So here it is. It's our interview with Nick Bilton. He is a writer for Vanity Fair. He is also an author. He has a book coming out in March, I believe, The American Kingpin, which you can find out about AmericanKingpin.com. But he wrote this really great article about why Hollywood as we know it is already over. And he's Nick Bilton. Nick, welcome to the 80-20 Movie Show.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Hey, Nick, really appreciate you coming on with us. As Pat has talked about many times in the past, you touched on a lot of themes that we just think, with being a movie show, we talk about movies all the time, obviously, but we find ourselves going to fewer and fewer movies in person, and everything we consume is either digital or we go to Redbox. So the disruption that you're talking about really jumped out at us. What I would like to ask, and Pat's going to get into the article, do you get a lot of pushback on these sorts of articles when you write something like this?
Yeah, a lot of pushback and a lot of support. It's definitely 50-50. But that's just, I've been doing this for a long time, and so one of the things you have to learn as a journalist is not how to write and report, but also how to, as my editor of the New York Times used to say, how to take the lumps.
Take your beatings along with your praise.
Take your beatings.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look, that there are certain times that you get pushback that is deserved, and there's certain times that you don't. And then with these kinds of stories, when you're writing about the future, I was at the New York Times for 14 years as a columnist writing about each industry being disrupted, and I've been at Vanity Fair now for over a year doing the same thing, and on a larger, broader scale. And the thing is, I remember when I wrote about the publishing industry being decimated, some of the letters and emails and phone calls I got from people in the book business, understandably. And it's a lot of the times the fear of the unknown, and here's someone that can be a human punching bag, so that's great for them. And other times it's people who are really supportive and they've been trying to tell their boss this for the past 6 years and to no avail, and here's an article they can use as an argument. So there's the good side and there's the bad side. Absolutely.
So let's talk a little bit about this article you wrote, Why Hollywood as We Know It Is Already Over. It's on VanityFair.com. I like I think it was like the second or third paragraph in. It was the foreshadowing. Everything's always great when you look back at it and you're like, oh, we should have seen that. But you foreshadow this a little bit with the emergence of Napster, and then obviously eventually iTunes took that over as well. But talk about how that kind of parallels to what we're seeing now with Hollywood. For Napster, for all the kids out there that aren't as old as Gary and I, that was how you could get free music for a while, and then if you just wanted an individual song, you would grab the song. You'd have to buy a whole shitty album or anything. But
try not to download a virus
while
you're doing
exactly.
One of the things that I think happens with technology is that technology comes about, and it often comes about at the bottom level of people that do tech. So, MP3s, when they were first being used, it was kids in college who couldn't afford to buy CDs and DVDs and things like that. And so, and then what happens on the antithesis of this is that you have the people that make money from these industries that don't want to know about technology. It's scary for them. It's something that they don't want to kind of look at. It's like the scary monster in the closet. If I don't open it, it won't be there. And often what they try to do is they think that they can push back, that the major industries think they can push back or they can ignore it. And there's quotes for every time this has happened. I remember there's a big Sony executive that said, "Who the hell would ever want to listen to music on a digital player? Like, that's just stupid." There was all the newspaper reporters that said no one will ever trust or read a blog, and you just see it over and over and over again, and every single time that industry is decimated, and it happens very, very quickly. Here's an example of how quickly technology happens. In 2012, I wrote what I didn't know at the time, but what was the first story about a little company called Snapchat, and I reached out to the guy who had started it, and his name was Evan Spiegel, and he said he couldn't speak to me because he was studying for his midterms that day. And yesterday, Snapchat announced it was going public at a $25 billion valuation. That's in 4 years. And so in 4 years, this thing goes from complete obscurity to being worth $25 billion. There's never been a time in history that you've seen that kind of thing happen at that speed. And it's not just happening to outliers like Snapchat, it's happening across the gamut. Facebook is one of the most valued companies in the world at $370 billion. It's 10 years old. And what you see happen with this disruption, especially when you're talking about traditional media like film and magazines and so on, is it's an added feature for these products. Facebook has 1.86 billion users. If they decide that they want to go after the movie industry, they could either pick up a couple of studios for the change that Mark Zuckerberg has lost between his couch cushions, or they can go and they can start streaming content, and they can say, hey, you know what, rather than you put that, the next Star Wars in the movie theater, let's put it on Facebook, and you can reach, 20 times the audience and make 20 times the money.
So one of the things that really struck me about your article is you were on set, and there's I think you said a couple hundred people on set with you. Those are all jobs, and it's funny that these people, it's not like they're staring down the end of a barrel, but how many of these jobs are going to be left in 5 years, Nick? What do you think is going to actually happen to the people that occupy these jobs?
Well, it's interesting. It's not so, let's just be frank here. It's not just the movie industry that's going to be affected by artificial intelligence and robots and automation. It's every industry. And when you talk to the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, their thing is, oh, well, we went through this before in the Industrial Revolution, and you had these people that were protesting outside of the factories where they used to work because there were now machines that were doing the work for them, and those people ended up getting new jobs because new industries were created. And that is completely true. The thing that I worry about is this, again, the speed with which it's going to happen this time. You know, the Industrial Revolution happened over several decades. The switch to automation is going to happen over several years, and then it's going to happen over several months. And so you can look at the film industry, and you can say, okay, there's going to be AI that will become, that will start editing, reality TV or the content on the fly. You'll have actors that will no longer will have jobs because there'll be digital versions of those actors that will be acting. And so you for example, you saw this in Star Wars. Two of the actors in Star Wars were not even real; they were, digital CGI versions of that. And I guarantee most people don't know which ones were which. And so it's going to happen with the trucking industry. They're in America. There are 10.5 million truckers, and Uber just bought a company called Otto, which is creating driverless trucks that are going to drive across the country. And then you see the subsidiary jobs that are lost from that. So, all those rest stops and the people that live in those towns that there are rest stops and the hotels and the motels and everything, they are all affected by the fact that there are no longer truckers driving across the country. So when you think about the film industry, it's not just the actors and the editors and the people on set, it's the support staff and the valet guys and security teams. And so the question is will those jobs parlay into something else, or will they vanish? And I think that if the industry embraces the technology and tries to figure out ways to work with it and make it more of a tool, I think that there's an opportunity for the movie industry to be able to make what they do better and more efficient and more cost effective. But if they don't, Silicon Valley is going to come along and essentially just bulldoze right over it.
That's a great point there. Our guest this week, Vanity Fair's Nick Bilton. How Hollywood, as we know, is already over. You kind of touched on this already. So how far away are we from George Lucas's dream of not ever needing actors becoming a reality? 20 years? You said it's hard to tell the difference, but I mean, when you saw Peter Cushing's fake Peter Cushing's mouth barely move, you kind of knew that wasn't him. And then when you see 19-year-old Carrie Fisher at the end of that one, sorry, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen it yet.
We've already reviewed it on the show. So.
I mean, how far away are we? Another 10 years? Another 20 years?
We're here. We're there. It's just, and the question is how far away before a director decides that they don't want to use real actors, and they want to use the CGI version. And the reality of that is that there's going to be a producer somewhere that's going to figure out at some point, well, it's going to be less expensive to do this, to shoot here, to do that, than it is to hire Leonardo DiCaprio or whatever. And I think that what will happen is, look, I mean, the movie A Dog's Life, which has gotten a lot of really negative press lately. One of the things that's truly fascinating about that is that some of the dogs in the film are CGI, and some of them are real, and they're trying to push back, saying, hey, some of the negative press that we're getting is from clips that were not even real dogs, and some, of course, is, and so you could see it's here. The question is how long before it becomes pervasive, where anyone can a film student can decide, I'm going to download the George Clooney CGI pack and he's going to be in my student film, and I think that that's a few years out. It's not 20 years from now. It's a few years from now.
So Nick, Pat and I reside in Loudoun County in Northern Virginia. We have a really large winery presence here, and there's a lot of breweries, and there's been some distilleries that are really small. They do small batch. Do you see, sort of as an example, could you see at some point in time where the technology for Hollywood allows sort of boutique filmmaking in a local location with a handful of people, but you can sell that as, hey, this was produced locally, this was produced with local talent, sort of a farm to table, idea. But could you see the industry and the technology allowing for some sort of boutique industry for Hollywood like that?
I think that's a great question. I think that there's a possibility that something like that could happen. But again, I mean, like, I'll talk about the iPhone for a second. One of the reasons the iPhone is made in China is because all of the factories that create all the parts for the iPhone are all within a walking distance to each other. So the factory that makes the glass is right next to the factory that makes the casing, which is right next to the factory that makes the screws that screw the casing into the glass, and so on and so forth. And so if they make a change to the casing, they can just send someone across the street to change the other things, and the screws and the size and this, that, and the other, and it all happens in a matter of minutes. Imagine if they had to FedEx that to someone in Virginia, who had to FedEx that to someone in California, who had to FedEx that. You're talking about days and billions of dollars and so on. And so the same is true for most industries. Wall Street exists on Wall Street because it's close to the exchanges and so on. And but you're also starting to see the opportunities arise for new industries that are rising up outside the existing ones. For example, virtual reality is something that it was originally being done down in LA in the film industry in Orange County and places like that, and it's now being done in Silicon Valley because Facebook acquired Oculus, and so that you're seeing more people go up there. Drones. There was a lot of people that thought all the drone technology was going to be figured out in Silicon Valley, but because of some of the laws in California, because of the FAA, they're now being done outside of the United States. And so, if it all depends on where the technology is born, essentially, and how it is, how it is used to depend on if you're ever going to get to that example of a farm-to-table version in Virginia. But it is possible. I really, truly think it is.
Piggybacking off of that one a little bit, there's a great stat I pulled from your article. Movie theater attendance is down to a 19-year low. You said revenues were slightly above $10 billion. We've seen, we already have it. We have films direct to video on demand, in some cases to Netflix. I think 81% or a little bit more, Gary, of the nation has internet access, give or take. How long?
84.2.
84.2.
This guy's got the numbers, Pat.
This guy, he's smart.
Yeah.
How far away are we to where is it as these changes happen and Hollywood keeps losing more money? How far away are we where there's no more big premieres? There's a limited amount of movie theaters. Gary's point here, it's just an art house type of thing now. It's like an old experience to go to a theater. How long before Hollywood would give up and just do everything streaming or on demand?
From what I've heard from people I spoke to in Hollywood for the story, a lot of them are really, really frustrated by the theaters because the theaters are the ones that do all the windowing and say when a film can go from the theater to DVD and streaming. And, that time used to be several months, and now it's getting shorter and shorter, but it still exists. And it's completely arbitrary. It's, one person said to me, imagine if you wrote your book, American Kingpin, right? You spent 2 years working on it, and your publisher said, okay, so here's the thing. People will be able to read your book, but only in the library for the first 3 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. They can read in the library, but can they bring their own snacks and drinks? And his example was, well, no, they can't do that. And then he said, but you can buy snacks. You can buy a bottle of water for $10, and you can park for $20, and you can get popcorn for $40. And he kind of explained it in that way. And you think about it, and it's completely illogical the way the film industry with theater works. And I think that people are incredibly frustrated. Consumers are frustrated by that, which is why they're stealing billions and billions and billions of dollars of films every single year that they're streaming on their large flat-screen TVs at home. And I think that eventually what you're going to see happen is the same thing you saw happen with cable. HBO, for example, did not allow people to stream their content because the cable providers didn't want that, because it meant that it was another reason why you had to get the whole cable package, was because you wanted HBO. And eventually it made more sense for HBO to risk destroying that relationship with the cable providers to go over the top with HBO Now. And it's worked out for them. They're making hundreds of millions of dollars from HBO Now. And I think that you're eventually going to see that happen. I think that someone is going to have the guts to push back against the theaters. But if they don't, they're just going to continue to lose money on the other side of the deal.
You brought up a great point with the bundling in HBO Now. I think it was Canada a couple years ago. Their courts ruled that they could go a la carte, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So, I mean, it would take a huge case, I think, like that to ever happen in the United States. I don't think that probably, I don't know, maybe 20, 25 years away. Would that ever be a possibility where the providers are taken to court?
It depends who's president. If it's Donald Trump, then no, it would not be a possibility because he would side with the larger.
Where's my rim shot? Where's my rim shot, Gary?
Yeah. But I think that I do think that there's what I think will happen is that televisions are going to get bigger and bigger and cheaper, and the technology is going to be. It's eventually, Samsung has been working on these technologies for several years where they envision that you have an entire wall in your living room that's a television, right? And you can imagine these kind of roll-up displays that you stick on your wall, and imagine in that scenario, you could, or maybe it's virtual reality. I mean, we don't know what the technology exactly is going to be, but there's going to be something like that that's going to be better than theater. And when that happens, and theater attendance continues to drop lower and lower and lower, you will have an instance where the theaters are not going to have the power they once had, and they still have that power because they still generate billions of dollars for these studios, but it's not going to be forever. And I think once that starts to change, which could be a year, it could be 5 years, but when that does happen, you're going to see people just abandon the theaters.
So Nick, real fast, I know we've taken up a lot of your time. We got a couple more questions, and we definitely want to find out about your book. But is 3D film, is that dead? Is virtual reality just killed that, or
3D film is the problem. Hey, look, the reality is 3D film was just a way to try to sell more TVs. It was complete nonsense, in my opinion. The consumers didn't want it, and they didn't want it not because they didn't want 3D. They didn't want it because they didn't want to have to put a pair of glasses on their face when they sat down to watch a movie in their living room, and they didn't want to have to worry about how many pairs of glasses they needed to own in case they decided to have a couple of friends over. I mean, it's just ludicrous. The path to least resistance is the thing that is going to be used the most, and I think that with 3D televisions and these curved displays and this, that, and the other, they were just nonsense. That at the Consumer Electronics Show, I remember walking around thinking to myself, like, this is just ludicrous. And this is the one thing where I do wonder if VR is going to be the future. I mean, it's one thing if you're going to go gaming, right? If you're going to go and shoot up a bunch of people in whatever the latest shooter game. It's fun to put on a pair of headsets and some goggles and grab your gun, and it's fun. It's a fun experience. But when you want to watch a movie with your significant other or your kids, you don't want to do that. You just want to lay there on the couch and eat some popcorn and watch the film. And I think that that the VR I can see being something that is an amazing experience for gaming. The question is, will people want to watch films with those kinds of things on?
He's Nick Bilton. He's a writer for Vanity Fair. He has a book coming out in March, American Kingpin, which you can find out at AmericanKingpin.com. You can reach him on Twitter at Nick Bilton. I also think when people watch movies now, they're too busy staring at their phones as well. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, his name is Pat.
Yeah. So when we go back to the article real fast, you made a good point here. Is it true? Has Tinseltown succeeded their thought-provoking, hit-making, drama, gritty, heart-wrenching movies to cable and pay TV? I think you made the point that all they can churn out for hits now are franchises and comic book franchises.
Yeah, I mean the franchise. Look, I bumped into someone the other day and read this article, and he a big director, and he said, I said, what do you think? He said, I completely agree with you. And I said, where do you think it all started? And he said, Steven Spielberg. Spielberg made films as brilliant as Spielberg was. He made films that were for the masses, and those things eventually became the blockbusters, and I think that that wasn't the intention for Spielberg, but that was one of the results. And so, once you get money involved and corporations involved and Wall Street and so on, the results are not necessarily about being creative, but they're about the bottom line. And that's something that I think you've seen happen with the film industry. We have Transformers as an example of how that can go terribly awry, right? It's interesting that the thing that I always find super fascinating is that the technologies, how much of a role technology plays in these things. If you ask me who the most important person involved in the summer blockbuster is, let me ask you guys, who do you think the most important person is that was ever involved in the creation of the summer blockbuster movie?
I'd probably go Spielberg.
Yeah, Spielberg and Lucas, right? Had to be.
Nope. It was a guy called Carrier.
I was about to
he
say
was the guy who invented. What's that?
I was about to say Carrier, but you beat me
Air
to it.
conditioning?
Yeah. He invented air conditioning.
Yeah,
that's exactly right. And so, what happened was Carrier. They couldn't. No one went to the movies in the summer because it was so hot.
Right.
And then Carrier invented air conditioning, and they were expensive, but the movie theaters bought the air conditioning, and so all across America in the summer, several times a week, people would go to the movie theaters just to get out of the heat, and so they needed to create these things that people could watch during the day, and they become the summer blockbuster. And of course, Spielberg comes along and fits into that, but that's an example of how you don't necessarily think about technology that's being created and how it can affect change in the entertainment business. And so, you asked me about 3D earlier. I think that was nonsense because it was an intentional creation, but there could be something out there that we haven't even thought of that will change everything. For example, just a little pie in the sky, fast forward, we're going to eventually have driverless cars, where our cars drive by themselves around the streets, and you don't have to be behind the wheel, and so cars will no longer be cars. You won't need 4 seats or 5 seats and a steering wheel. You could imagine a car that's a bed that you could sleep in while you travel between LA and San Francisco or New York and Washington or whatever. You could imagine a car that's a movie theater car where you're like, I want to watch a movie for this 2-hour trip, or a TV show on my way to work or something like that. And in that instance, maybe it's the driverless car that creates the next version of whatever our entertainment or film or 3D things will be. We just don't know.
So I can't wait to do my WebEx from my car as I'm driving to work, or as I'm being driven to work, Pat.
Sure.
WebEx with the customer. Nick, before we let you go, can you tell us a little bit what American Kingpin is going to be about?
Yeah, so it comes out May 2nd. You can pre-order it now, and it's the true story of this guy called Ross Ulbricht, it's essentially a real life Breaking Bad. It's a nonfiction narrative, and Ross was this kid at Penn State. He was super smart physicist, and he got really into libertarian ideals, and he just believed that the government was too big and too powerful, and he wanted to change that. And so he developed a website called the Silk Road, where you could buy and sell anything imaginable. And at first it was drugs, and then it was guns, and then people started getting murdered and all these different things. And it's the story of how he created the site and how big it got, and the hunt for him, and the 4 different agencies of government that were trying to find him, and how some of the cops ended up becoming bad and working for him, so that's what it's about. It's a pretty dramatic tale.
So will you be launching on a book tour or anything when it comes out?
Yeah, I would start the book tour in May, and then I'll be running around talking to people about it.
Gary, let's take a minute and tell you about one of the original 80/20 Movie Show sponsors, K&N Air Filters.
Pat, we love K&N air filters for many reasons. They are designed to increase horsepower and acceleration while providing outstanding engine protection. They manufacture their awesome air intake system, which you are very familiar with, and the K&N million-mile limited warranty.
Don't forget that millions of K&N air filters have been sold since 1969, are made from quality materials in the United States, and are the original performance filter of NASCAR. In addition to air filters, K&N sells over 5,000 products designed for cars, cars, trucks, motorcycles, engines, and industrial applications.
K&N replacement air filters are simple to install, and as you have heard us say before, they will be the last air filter your vehicle will ever need.
Go to knfilters.com/podcast and get a great deal on a K&N replacement air filter with free shipping and, as a bonus, a free K&N hat. That's knfilters.com/podcast. Where can the people touch us?
So you can always email us, and thank you for the emails we've been getting at 820movies@gmail.com. On the Twitter.
And
I'm at Fatherhood Rules.
I'm at the Red Shamrock. And for our YouTube viewers, Gary, we're going to tape this part for the YouTube definitely. Please click subscribe if you enjoy what you're watching.
Or click it.
Yeah. And then leave us a comment or a thumbs up, thumbs down. We
Tell
always
us
love that.
we should die.
Yeah.
That's still my favorite comment ever, Pat.
Yeah. For your 80/20 movie show, I'm Pat Himes.
I'm Gary Smith.
See you next week.